Hi, so we'll be starting at 5 past.
Welcome to Rise Africa's four-part webinar series, Realizing Unbound Possibilities. This series sets the stage for the 2025 Urban Action Festival presented by Rise Africa, where we'll introduce key themes and critical discussions that will shape the festival's thought journey. Join thought leaders and provocative speakers as they share powerful insights on African urban realities and the boundless potential of our cities. Together, we'll delve into topics ranging from urban dynamics and reimagining knowledge systems to the transformative power of social imagination in our cities. Each session will be recorded and made available on our platforms. Stay connected through our monthly mailer, where we'll announce upcoming topics and share key takeaways from past webinars. Engage, explore, imagine, and reimagine. We look forward to seeing you at the inaugural in-person Urban Action Festival in Cape Town from May 25th to 29th, 2025, as we explore realizing unbound possibilities through policy, research, creativity, and practice.
Look at how far you have come. Look at how far you are going, from the rubbles of the city to royalty. Yes, you are the stuff that legends are made from. We come from Abantu of the crackling fire, Abantu that come alive around the burning, Abantu that set the air alight with blazing voices, Abantu that chanted for freedom from the front lines, spreading struggle songs from yesteryears like a wildfire, igniting all the way up to touch the skies. Harambe! I come from the urban legends who placed their lives on those lines. I want to be heard. I want our stories to be told. I want our songs to be sung by the children. Go on then. Tell the children that they are the stuff that legends are made from. You are. Yes, you are the stuff that legends are made from.
Hello, good afternoon or morning, or good day at whatever time you are joining us today. My name is Vida. Thank you so much for joining us for the third of our four-part Rise Africa webinar series, where we will be unpacking the themes, realizing unbound possibilities. So to date, we have gone over a brief look at what the African urban dynamics are currently looking like. We've heard from people hearing about how data is transforming how we go about urban design and how we also use data for better community sense making. And today we'll be touching on unbound imagination. We'll be unlocking the possibilities for African cities through social creativity. So on that note, register now for the last installment of our 4-part webinar series, which will be coming up right before we actually have our first in-person festival. So May is going to be quite a packed month, and if you are not unfortunately joining us at the festival, it would be great to still see you online. And on the note of the upcoming Rise Africa Action Festival, so as you may have heard from our mailer or from social media, we will be having our first in-person festival in Cape Town from May 25th to 29th. So you can see the list of some of the amazing speakers that'll be joining us in May. A lot of these are familiar faces from past Rises. A lot of these may be familiar faces from those who are in the urban space. So really looking forward to actually having everyone in the room be able to be touched and listen directly and network directly with these individuals. So we look forward to seeing you there. Keep a lookout in the chat. You'll see links to register for the festival as well as register for the next webinar upcoming. Next slide. And we have come to a close for those who've been keeping up with our photo competition. As we speak, they are judging the images that will make up our 5th photo competition. So please do follow us online and on our Instagram to see who the winners are. This year's theme was Where We Gather, and we were celebrating the connection spaces that our cities form all around us. I can definitely say it's been a very exciting lineup. So keep up on the website itself, where we'll be having the virtual exhibition, as well as on social media, where we'll announce the winner and 2 runners-up. So today's chat is on Unbound Imagination, unlocking the possibilities for African cities through social creativity. So we'll be hearing from 2 speakers who are taking us through this topic from quite early development approach first. So we'll be hearing from Marie Williams, and we'll be hearing from Stain Delo. So I think we're happy to stop sharing now. And then I'll be introducing the topic and our first speaker, Stain. So today's chat on urban unbound imagination, where we'll be considering how having unbound imagination is a form of making use of what's already out there and how we make use of this critically to transform the world around us. So it's not in disillusion of the surrounding limitations or the surrounding world that we have, but it's a way of creatively finding methods that solve the problems around us and developing solutions that can help us navigate beyond our current realities. So this is always towards having more just, more equitable future cities that we dare to imagine. The focal point for today is on how we'll be exploring the resources that need to be poured into building imaginative capabilities, getting it right from those early ages on, and how this can impact cities in Africa. Firstly, through a design perspective, and then broadly through shaping communities. So to guide us through this exploration, we'll be hearing from Stain Delo and Marie Williams. So first up, Marie Williams is a playful chartered engineer. She's a UK Design Council expert, a design lecturer, TEDx speaker, and CEO of Dream Networks. Her work focuses on co-designing playful cities, regenerative and culturally resilient spaces, redefining play through sustainable, inclusive design. She partners with technology and communities to alleviate inequality, specializing in co-designing with children, young people, and neurodivergent groups. As the founder and CEO of Dream Networks, she has facilitated play for over 60,000 people in the UK and in Africa by collaborating with businesses, schools, and communities. She also contributes to the Institute of Mechanical Engineers, Energy, Environmental, and Sustainability community. Through her PhD at UCL's Berlat School of Architecture, she developed a co-design framework for outdoor play in urban poor, and refugee contexts. She has lectured on design, innovation, and play at institutions, including Bristol University, RCA, Yale Art Center, College of Design, and the University of Nairobi. Thank you so much for joining us, Marie.
All
That's
right,
quite
a long bio.
yeah, but it's a well-achieved bio. I think it definitely speaks to the experience you have, especially when it comes to play and the use of play in design and co-design with young people and communities alike. So I think with that, happy to kick this off with you sharing on how can incorporating play and technology support and potentially enhance imaginative capabilities for more just urban futures.
Awesome, I'll do it. I'm just trying to see how to share. 1 second. Do you have to give me access to sharing?
Yeah, you should. It's the green button right at the bottom there.
Yeah. Oh, I see. I was pressing. Well, that's bad UI, but in my opinion. Anyway, no worries. I'm going to show everybody. So thank you for that amazing introduction. I'm expanding my screen, so I won't be able to know if anything goes wrong, you can't hear me, etc. So please just let me know. So my first slide is going to just really quickly introduce us. Video introduced us quite well. So I'm the CEO of a social enterprise that co-designs and makes play spaces. Our main focus is recognizing that there's a lot of inequity in access to play. It may be due to poverty, it may be due to race, it may just be due to where you actually live, being maybe more congested, there isn't space to play. Numerous different narratives and reasons why children don't play, and we really focus on how we can enable the children themselves to be at the design table so their imaginations can lead the design and affect their built environment. And our main focus is we've got like 3 pillars: trying to make spaces that are inclusive, using play materials that are accessible and sustainable, and really working on those local social connections to be able to create more equitable, inclusive, all those good words, regenerative futures for the children and for everyone around them. So one thing I like to sometimes speak about is like child development theory. I won't go into too much detail, but there's someone called Vygotsky. He's a famous Russian, I guess, child psychologist, bit of a philosopher as well. And he really highlighted how children learn socially. They construct their world and their ideas through social interactions with other people. But not just that, children do potentially multiple things at the same time. And that quote really speaks a lot to a key part of our ethos in terms of thinking how can we make a world that's more inclusive. It's recognizing creativity that is social has diverse ways of being able to produce something in the world and develop a design. So it says a child does not distinguish between poetry or prose, narrative from drama. A child draws and tells story at the same time, plays theatre, creates a text for his own or her own. So there's multiple different ways of doing things. And hopefully that will come out a lot when I speak, as I speak, and hopefully have a Q&A, we can go into that more detail. So to be able to get a child to maybe be more independent or more autonomous in their design, we really try to have a variety of ways to come to that design table. So I'm going to show you a few really briefly. So a key part of co-design is different ways to look at it, but you're trying to say the user themselves are able to engage with the design process. You could either have a co-design and basically do interviews, do research with the community, get an understanding of what their challenges are, what they desire, and design from there. And that's like an informant. And you can take it all the way to a design partner and really try to do design partnerships. So you want the children themselves to actually be able to engage in the design, not just telling us what they want. We don't want to design for them, we want to design with them. So this example here, so just flipped, is of a poster presentation, and you might think this looks quite like messy, what's going on here, but we're working with autistic children who are aged 14 to 17, and we want to give them diverse ways of being able to engage. So they did posters to show what they were thinking, how they're designing. They used Play-Doh, so tactile material. That image there that you're probably thinking, that's like a lot of colors, but that's like a rainwater garden, and they'd expressed to us what it was through their audibly. They use their voice and they use the materials to express how they feel for us to design that space. This is mixed media, so this is a different group of children, and they're using just different, again, it's tactile materials to be able to engage with how they feel about nature, how they feel about having like a dinosaur type space in their environment. We've developed something more recently called Play Bingo, which is in Kenya. That image, it's trying to say when you want to design a play space, as opposed to having to draw or make or think, how can you use your body to reimagine what your space can look like? So you had prompts. So things such as like, what could you do to jump in that space? What will help you balance? We won't use this language for children, but like what will help you balance? What can help you laugh? And for their bodies, they enacted what that looked like. And the last one is something that I'm going to go into a bit more, is thinking what role does AI have in terms of trying to release more imaginations? Can it constrain, and what can it release? And that image is something that we did in a school in South London. If any of you from London, I've got quite a strong London accent. I'm from London. And that image has, we're working with children to understand like what they want to do with solar panels in their play spaces. And they had ideas of butterflies and nature. So use AI to generate images to hopefully inspire them. In some cases it inspire, but in some cases it actually potentially restrains their mindset. So this is a video. I'm not sure if I've actually shared my sounds. It might not share. If you can't hear anything, which I can't, I'll just tell you what they say. You've got to trust me. Can you hear it?
Yeah, softly.
Softly. One second.
When they said that we can design anything we want, that's when like lots of crazy ideas popped into my mind.
You could just do your own ideas. When we put our heads together, think at the same time, and we pick each other's ideas or combine them, they turn out really good.
And the whole school is involved. So we have.
So that video, which was quite soft, was basically some children trying to say their experience of designing. One thing that the girl said at the end is like when we pick our different ideas and bring them together, like great things occur. In the beginning, one of the boys says initially we thought it was impossible. That when we started the project, we realized it was possible. So a key part of enabling that social creativity is one, having the tools, but being able to support, be it a child or somebody who's not trained in design or urban planning or whatever it may be, to be able to engage in that design process. So I've spoken about the numerous methodologies we use, but we really try and, I guess, cultivate the children's ideas, support them along the way. The word I use is nurturing the ideas, but also remind them that the impossible is possible. So we use a lot of open-ended questions as opposed to closed questions. So as opposed to saying, do you think that will work? Say yes or no. You could say, if you had like an idea where a slide, use a slide, so it's easy for us to think about it, is going into water, or you could say, where is that slide going? And it helps them think more about the idea and maybe help them filter themselves what maybe they've imagined that isn't very possible, and what is impossible in their mind. How can we support them with our knowledge in terms of materials, knowledge of materials and understanding, as like in engineering, understand the environment, to support those ideas to flourish. So I won't go into too much detail there. It's maybe just food for thought, but to think of what is your role when you're doing social creativity. So one of the things I'm going to touch on is our work is obviously decolonial thought. So even though I'm from London, I've got a London accent, I'm from London, but I'm also Nigerian. I currently live in London and often in Naivasha. And a key thing is recognizing that often when we're designing children, we consistently had the same aesthetic or that same style. And we're trying to understand like how can we have more diverse. So one word that is spoken a lot potentially in decolonial thought and also in other areas is plural. So I've said diverse or many, plural is exactly the same thing. And saying how can we give different people different perspectives of what is good or what is quality or what can be experienced. So those the images there, I'm just going to explain them briefly. The one at the top, so on your right top. So on the left-hand side, we've got 5 strategies to help people decolonizing play and design. So I'm just touching 3 of them. On the number 3, actually the third one. And in the image you can see of a house, it's the children you saw in the previous video. And they designed a space which, when I initially saw it, I'm not in all the workshops at all. It looks like basically different blocks. And the children explained that, they wanted to be their dancing step next to numerous different aspects of the play space. They use it to dance, they use it to jump. The teacher said it's the best part of the play space. We put colours around it just to make it a bit more playful. We put different materials to try to speak to different tactile engagement and also think of people with different abilities, maybe they want to sit there, what do they want to use of that space. The beauty of it was the plurality, diversity in the play experience is just afforded from a simple step that has different levels. We had the budget we spent on all the other play features. The one that's preferred was that simple one, and it was preferred because of the interactions that it afforded to the children. Then the image below is of children in a project we did in Molo, where children just playing hopscotch. Again, it may seem quite simple. In decolonial thought, maybe it may be seen as a bit, not decolonial thought, I guess, in terms of our, I think that's the right word, in terms of our formation of our mind of what is good, it may be seen as simple and maybe even a bit more primitive. Like people like years ago, they're just jumping on hopscotch. We should do even more for our children. But again, this particular space afforded significant opportunities for children. It enabled girls to play, enabled boys to play. It was simple to maintain. There's numerous good things about having that form of aesthetic in the space. So I don't want to go into like all decolonial theory because I'm not an expert in it. I do a lot of work in it. But a key is numerous definitions, but this is one by Elizabeth Doyle Tunstall. Many people may know her. She's done a book actually on decolonizing design. And she says, put Indigenous peoples first and dismantle the biases in tech and in race. And Indigenous as Africans, we may say it just actually the people who are initially natively in that environment, in that space, are Indigenous. But as we know, our history has had so much movement. But it's that mindset of the Indigenous people that were there first. They'll be prioritized and when we're trying to design our spaces and also in the methodologies we use. This is my one. I is numerous, but I had to unpack it for myself. And for me, definitely as a like African diaspora, so like Nigerian, but actually raised in London and now in East Africa. For me, it's a lot of process on learning what I thought was good, on learning what I thought mattered, on learning about like how I dress my hair, on learning about why I can actually decide to have my hair straight, numerous different little things, and thinking what do I want to learn to liberate more plural, diverse ways of seeing and being and knowing in our world that our modern world has suppressed. And when you're thinking about that social creativity, it's thinking that when you're working with numerous different partners or players in the urban design, or as we reimagine the future, or imagining the future of Africa, that ability to consistently unlearn what you know, to be able to learn others, and having that empathy and that mutual respect is really pivotal in changing how you design. Let me just check how I'm doing it for time, because as I mentioned, as I said, I'm like a bit of a lecturer, so I don't want to like lecture and go over time too much. But something that I like this image, it's an image I did for, just Googled online, different places that had been colonized and put playground. And the images here are all pretty similar in terms of the experiences they afford. And even to an extent, the aesthetic of Taiwan might look a bit different because it's got a pineapple in the middle, but it's still the same thing. Even materiality, it's the same kind of material, like plastic or plastic tap. So my brain just fiberglass, there you go, fiberglass and different forms of plastic that have afforded it to be created. It's got a similar aesthetic, and it's that mindset of recognizing that often colonization brought a mindset where we want to be more, I guess, homogeneous, have a more singular worldview. Our singular worldview was often associated at time with modernity and economic growth and development. So that's why I often use the image as a prompt to help us think when we're considering our imaginations, who are we learning from? Who do we believe matters when we're considering the future imagination? And how do we need to change our mindset and what we consider for our future to be more inclusive of other people's ways of seeing and being and knowing in the world? So one thing that I think is really important for us on the African continent is actually climate change. You know, when I just got in the call, I was saying that I have to go first. So thank you everyone to let me go first because of the flooding and because of rain, like floods. And right now we have so much rain, so my internet cuts off. I'm sure many of us may relate to this. So these are two images, one's in Nairobi from last year and one's in South Africa. One's in South African school environment in that province. I think around 400 people died, 47 children died from flooded. In Nairobi, there was maybe less deaths, but there was a lot of, insecurity. Like you can see water's going into a house. So I'm kind of shifting from play, because a lot of my work is climate change, to put them together to say, actually, when you're considering our future, we really need to think of what is happening to us now, what trends do we need to be aware of, and climate change being a key one, and how do we integrate that into how we imagine a more equitable future, and who are we inviting to the table to engage with it. And a key thing just to highlight is play is a principle in terms of it's enabling people to have different methodologies, so that, I mentioned that example of a child, having different things that they're doing, different ideas being brought to the table, being able to be creative, being able to imagine is really key, but it's still important to really understand what desires do we want to address. And our desire is a more equitable future for Africans that considers our different ways of doing and being, but also is resilient to what's coming at us, which is climate change. I haven't got time to go through this. I might skip it. But a key thing is when we're thinking about the future, we need to consider trends. And our future isn't based on just one choice or one individual choice. It's a combination. It's that whole thing of it's being social. We're going to cultivate it together. But particularly where I am in Lake Naivasha, the reason the lake is going up, the reason we've got water isn't my choice. I didn't do something, potentially I didn't. It's the global choices that have affected the environment. So when you're thinking about the future, you're thinking about the fact it's not predictable and there's numerous different choices that affect it. But when we want to produce our preferred future, how do we collectively, socially, creatively consider these trends and respond to them and react to them? I won't go into this one just because of time. If you have time later, I'll go back to it. But it just basically highlights some key points. When we're considering imagination, we need to think about our memories, and our memories are informed by hopefully our culture. And we need to bring that to life and recognize it to be important. We need to think about the emotions, particularly in play. Play is seen as something that's pleasurable. So when we're thinking of what pleasures do we want to bring when we're creating play spaces, we want those emotions to come back to the fore. But for every single person, the emotion that they feel from one thing will change. I'll give you a quick example, even though I said I won't explain it. A child, might see a chair and they may have seen that chair. And I saw this in Kitengela actually when we were working with urban refugees and I guess urban poor Kenyan. Some of the younger children were getting stairs and they were stacking them and they were making a train. And their memory will be of amazing stairs, train, fun, at that time. Then if you look at that image I just showed you in the past, a child of the same age may associate chair with devastation, anger, upset. So when we're thinking about our imaginations, we really need to consider what do the things that we want to create afford to different people, and how much are they drawing on pleasurable memories as well as displeasurable memories, and what balance do we want to achieve. So yeah, sorry, Vido, I just realized I was going to explain that, but for time, I don't want to go into too much detail. But anyone can contact me because this is slightly academic, it's aesthetic fairy, but you can contact me if you want to know more. Now it's the fun bit. So one of the key things when I was speaking to Vidal about the work we've been doing is we've been thinking about generative AI and how it can help unpack different realities for play. So I'm going to go through 3 examples, 3 different time frames examples. And I want it to be something that we go, this is so cool. Why don't we recognize this is important to our play, and what could it look like for our present and for our future? That's my desire. It might not be yours. So the image on the left-hand side is of a boy drumming, and that speaks a lot to my heritage as a Nigerian and how much drumming has meant to me as in my past, even through playing, through the way I danced, because again, that plurality of how play could be experienced is really important for us to recognize. And then the other image on the right-hand side has a boy in a pastoral land. He's running with the goat. He's looking forward, the goat's looking back. All of these were created with a software that we use called Kriya AI to try and help people recognize that in different contexts, beyond the image that you saw of that plastic playground, there are other forms of play that are heritage, that speak to diverse ways that children can develop, that we want to socially show people that, we can create a different narrative about the heritage of how we've played, but also a lot of these images are actually our reality, which is not a problem at all. Then this one speaks to more of the injustice. So that image we created when I was considering the water hyacinth in Lake Naivasha. As Vidal said, I'm an engineer, I design, so I like techie stuff, and I also really care about the environment. So this was trying to see how can we use the climate change to advantage? What could we use World Hyacinth for? And how could like intergenerational play be cultivated through it? Again, this has not been done. The AI has been informed by like a memory I had. So if you remember those 3 circles, a memory I had, an interaction I thought of, and the generative AI brought it to the fore, so it can be a conversation that people can actually respond to. Then the image on the right-hand side is recognizing the reality that a lot of girls right now in our urban spaces, and this is really for my research, is really true. A lot of girls aren't able to access play as much. And it's got like a barbed wire to say that she's playing, but she's not able to access play. And these images are just a bit, you know, Vidal talked about the poster competition, the photo competition. Images are so important in terms of, one, helping people to recognize, to have empathy, to recognize vulnerabilities, to consider other people's realities, but also consider what could we do for a more preferred future where more people are included. Then the last one, I've got a lot of these. We've actually quite a lot because we exhibited at Nairobi Design Week about 3 weeks ago. So it was on exhibit. So you have a range of them, but these ones are my favorite. This is kind of playful. It's looking on the left-hand side, how can our shopping malls, so this is kind of, if anyone knows Village Market in Nairobi, it's being built on an aesthetic of Village Market, and it's thinking, how can we consider how water rights can be used for our advantage? What ways can we cultivate water to support more people when they're in other social environments to be able to dwell and be able to engage in the space? The image on the right is highlighting how actually play can be part of all parts of our world. So it's got a bouncy castle, particularly in Nairobi, and I think not just in Nairobi, numerous parts of the world. There's more and more bouncy castles. You know, play becomes more and more structured. Everybody has to pay for their children to go on the bouncy castle. It's trying to say, how can we afford spaces where more people can just play? To be able to enter that building, you have to be able to jump on the bouncy castle. It's more speculative design. It's thinking of a future that is boundless. What can we do to enable more children to be able to play? And how can we speak to the things that are maybe challenging in terms of having numerous plastic bouncy castles? What can they do to highlight different parts of heritage and culture? As you can see from, you know, that how that's decorated. It's not the normal aesthetic of a bouncy castle. So I know I've probably gone over time and I won't go through this. A key thing maybe when we do Q&A is that even though we try to think of how we can be plural in our methodology for enabling children to design, and that enables more people to design, and we're doing more with AI, we always really have to consistently think, as Africans who maybe want to utilize AI, how much it also has been used in an unethical manner. So for us, we're really trying, we're not at the answer at all, but we're thinking, how can we make working with AI to be able to create more boundless futures, enable more people to engage in social creativity more fair, and how can we take out negative biases? And that's me.
Thank you so much, Marie. I feel like that was such a broad understanding, and it went beyond understanding of play and the potential for play, but even how play itself can be a tool for how we interact with being boundless and how we interact with building imaginative capabilities in quite young, but then even looking across the board at how it can be used as a storytelling tool for sharing information about what's going on the ground. And I mean, it could go on and on and on. But I'll pick up on some of the points that you brought up towards the end of this discussion. Right now, I would like to introduce Stain Delu. So Stain Delu is a clinical developmental psychologist and the founder of Little Lions Child Coaching, an NGO dedicated to making mental health support accessible to children in under-resourced communities. His PhD research at the University of Cape Town focused on resilience in South African children, where he witnessed firsthand the urgent need for accessible mental health care. Since 2019, Little Lions has trained over 190 local role models as mental health coaches and provided free daily workshops to more than 4,000 children, helping to boost emotional resilience, confidence, and coping skills. In 2024, for World Mental Health Day, Little Lions launched Reimagining Temba, South Africa's first child mental health awareness campaign in a township, collaborating with local artist Makalia Peterson to spark vital conversation about mental well-being through innovative programs like the like the Inner Lion program. Little Lions continues to champion accessible mental health care for children across Africa. So, I mean, Stain, that's a very well-rounded explanation of, I think, some of the work that you've done, but I'm really keen for you to expand a little bit more on the work that you've done, especially around reimagining Temba, working with an artist, and how the impact of keeping in mind surrounding environments can affect imaginative capabilities in youth. So how do we build imaginative capabilities from young to remain inspired about the future of their surrounding environment?
Yes, amazing. Again, also very long bio, but very welcome everyone. So originally from the Netherlands, but I've been in Cape Town, South Africa since 2018. And indeed clinical developmental psychologist, and I was doing my PhD at University of Cape Town, and then realized quickly that mental health support is very much lacking there where it's needed the most, at the heart of communities, and especially for kids, young children. So with Little Lions, we focus on children aged 8 to 13, because I think that's such a foundational age for these kids to still learn everything and anything about their emotional well-being, their coping skills, and to really set them off on the right path. So we've always been focusing on that young age. And I guess the beautiful thing there is like, we want to make our work always very like playful, creative, inspiring, because, in developmental psychology, the one thing that we know is that for children growing up, children growing up in South African townships, endure a lot of traumatic events. So on average, that's 6 to 8 traumatic events that they go through each year. So growing up in a township, you go through a lot. If you compare that, for instance, to the US or the UK, there's 4.8 traumatic events in your lifetime. So children, are faced with a lot of adversity just by simply growing up in the space that they were born in. And one thing that we know from the developmental psychology aspect is that what they lose is that creativity. And yet you need creativity to have that, inspiration and to see a positive future and to be able to showcase yourself, to be like, wait a minute, I can become more than the space that I live in. So one of the things that we did is with a local artist, Mikalia Peterson, she's from Cape Town. And she actually came to me with the idea of why not highlight the work that we're doing with Little Lions, but in a different way, but by using imagery. And I was obviously sold on that idea. So you've got some slides probably for me, right? Vida, this is your cue. So what we did is, we work with a lot of kids, and we started in a community called Langa. And Langa is a township that's been around for 100 years. So they just celebrated their 100-year existence. And part of that and World Mental Health Day, we were like, why don't we create beautiful imagery to showcase the positive side of these young girls instead of just focusing on the negative? And I guess, especially when it comes to mental health, one of the things that we always challenge with, what we're always faced with, is that often when it's mental, it's about depression, anxiety, trauma. And we are, with Little Lions, are really trying to change that narrative. We're trying to normalize mental health conversations and to showcase that that mental health is, okay to talk about. So we also use a lot of positive words. We don't actually use the word of mental health a lot. We talk about emotions and qualities and coping and like how to move forward. So again, reimagining Temba was aimed to showcase the qualities of 12 young girls. We asked young boys and girls to join, but in the end it was girls, and I actually love that. So we used young girls and really like dressed them up in beautiful, beautiful ways to really tell the story of Temba. And Temba in Xhosa means hope, and in Zulu. And reimagining hope is what we're trying to achieve through this campaign. And so in South African townships, there's not a lot of mental health awareness. There's a lot of stigmas. There's a lot of barriers when it comes to mental health. So we try to create something positive. So a positive mental health campaign. While the slides are coming, I think one of the things that we were really challenged with was government support. So here we are in a community that is really just struggling to come by, right? It's like City of Cape Town is hardly addressing any of the issues that are there when it comes to structural places, it's such a structurally disadvantaged community. We've been in that community working there since 2019, trying to give kids a better sense of being. So we literally work on street corners, making use of what is around. And then when we tried to launch this campaign, I think one of the biggest challenges was that we tried to get government buy-in to launch this campaign. And government was really pushing back. They were like, if it's a campaign, you're a political party. If you're a political party, then it means that, let's go back to one slide back. If it's a political party, then you need to have political posters. The posters size were only a small size. So the idea for us was create a campaign with 12 young girls standing in their qualities, in their beauty, to aspire hope in a creative way, in a way that is imaginative, is playful, showcasing these girls in another way than just their township setting. But all the images were shot in the township with local artists, local clothing, making use of local spaces to create that connection between the pictures, between the message that was there in Xhosa and in English, to really create more understanding around mental health, awareness around mental health, that it's positive. And just to showcase these girls that was maybe phase one, is show these girls that there's more out there than they could ever imagine. So when you ask me a bit of speak to the imaginative capacity of youth development, I guess this project was all about that. It's about showing these children, and here you see Mikalia, our phenomenal artist, shooting these pictures out on the streets when it wasn't always the safest to just do it, with these two young sisters, making the photos. They were never exposed to even these, clothing, and now they're doing a photo shoot. So the campaign in the end was actually picked up by a local gallery. So we were able to put all the photos up in a gallery space. So we invited the young girls. And again, talk about imagination, right? These girls were now at this gallery. It was crazy busy. It happened to be the 9th of August, which was Women's Day in South Africa. And we launched it with Mika and Reservoir, and we put all the photos were for sale. And the girls were there. And at one point they didn't want to leave, and I was quite scared they might be uncomfortable. But the more they were there was a lot of people around. And then at one point I asked them, why didn't they want to leave? And they're like, we finally feel seen. We finally feel like we matter. We finally feel like people see us for who we are. And I think that was so powerful to create this through imagery and through creating a story and a campaign. And I guess one of the things that we really try to do is create hope, create positive words for girls. And I think it was an easy way for us to create conversation. So now in the end, when we had to get community buy-in from the community, be like, are we able to put up these posters? They were so happy. So we also organized tours on Friday afternoons from the local community center to go on the Themba walkway, to really walk the story of Themba with all these pictures. And just to showcase that everything that these girls learn, Themba reminded me that I'm smart. Themba reminded me to find my voice, to really create beautiful conversations around just the images and the quotes. So I think that's where I'm going to round up, but yeah. I can speak about the pictures, but sorry, Vida, back to you.
No, thank you so much. Thank you for that, and also for giving great context to, I think, the different stages of the project itself. So from working with Michaelia, with the artist, with shooting with the children, and then seeing it, um, hearing of it being exhibited in the space and the children actually finding themselves in the space, and then even more so in the communities itself. So I mean, before I start hounding you both with questions that I've had from the conversations that you've already put forward, I just wanted to give an opportunity to anyone in the audience that might have any questions. Yeah, to feel free to put them in the comments. Otherwise, I'll probably just start with my own list of questions that I had. Um, for the most part, this can be answered by either one of you. But I mean, just to start off with, Stain, I'm quite curious about, I think, more of how, when you went beyond this point of trying to figure out how to get governance involved, how did it feel to get the community involved in the project like reimagining Temba? So seeing the posters up, was there anything that struck you when it came to the community's engagement with the posters, from the quotes to the imagery itself?
Yeah. No, I think it was actually, so it was interesting. So government really, like, they were like very like difficult when in terms of this campaign, because they were like, well, it's, you know, it's a campaign, so you're a political party, so you can't put any posters up. It's never been done before. So the thing that we tried to do, it was never been done because nothing really happens there. So like they were like, wait a minute, why are you trying to do something that's never been done? So we really had to show them that this is something that is cool and very necessary. And so we had to pull and push any and every government level just to get the support and the permits to hang these posters. But one of the cool thing there was that at one point for one of the we did multiple applications for the permits, but was like, okay, get community buy-in. And so we've always been in the community. So it was actually quite easy to, okay, let's get signatures. I was like, well, we're always there already. But now, you know, I went with our local coaches because obviously you want to speak the local language and my Xhosa is very limited. But, you know, when we try to explain, you know, we have these pictures and we want to put them up in your street, which is also a public street. It's public space, you know, but we want to put up these pictures to showcase these beautiful girls and their stories. I mean, not a single person said no. Like they were all amazed and they were applauding us and like, yes, yes, yes. So, you know, then it's frustrating when you hear you've got local girls, you've got a local photographer, you've got local buy-in from anyone and everyone on the street. The community center, which is run by government, was on board. Everyone there was okay. But then when government needs to sign off on it, they're like just so far removed from what's happening in these surrounding communities that they just, you know, made it very, very difficult for us. So we, until the day, I think the day before, and this was a 5-month process, the day before we hung all the posts, we didn't have a permit. So yeah, it's been a challenge, but hey, you got to just keep pushing because we had all the buy-in from the right people. So that for me was the most important.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that even like leads into the question I was going to ask Marie. How do you actually advocate for, how do you, first start, I mean, there's the emotional energy that goes into it, but then how do you advocate for something like play and for co-design play spaces when there are limited resources, or like when there are certain biases as to how land should be used, especially with limited access to lands in some cases when it comes to urban design, and we need to be innovative around urban design. How do you advocate for play?
For me, I really think it's a key part is the partnerships you form. So we work with corporates initially, and it's really touched on the fact of considering value. You know, if you're working with government agencies or you're working with corporates, so what do they value? Maybe the government might value votes, depending on whether it's local government, county government, you know, different things. Things that are going to address the services they already need to respond to. So I really like that example that was given because we did a project in the UK, we did a poster exhibition and it was in a public space. And we had no problem, no red tape, because the people who own that public space had become privatized. So you've got the privatized people on board and we'll be able to engage with them. So we do that consistently. We work with the corporates or the landowners to first of all gather their space. And that landowner may be a private landowner, it may be a school, and we get their buy-in by speaking to what they value. So when we do our co-design workshops, we do it on the STEM, so science, technology, or STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. And schools value that, corporates value that educational part of us working with play. So that because that value system is in place, we get the funding. And I think funding for play is what advocacy is about. You know, you need to have the space, but you need the funding to be able to produce, even if it's simple, you need to be able to maintain it. That simple hopscotch needs to be maintained. The big structures we have created need to be maintained. And I keep on saying the right word, the local connections you produce have to really think about the system stakeholders that you want to engage with, and how do you talk about what you're producing, the methodology, the co-design of what is produced in play, the emotional well-being, the physical development, the cognitive development. You have to tell all those stories and bring them to the table. Is it taxing and tiring? Yes. Is it something I would ever give up? I used to be an aerospace engineer. Would I go back to aerospace? No. It's because we've got that passion, recognizing that you're getting the youth, the children's voices on the table. They're changing the world, you know, and that's so valuable to them. It's going to change, like if they felt like they weren't able to do much, now they're able to do a little, and that little can transform their mindset. So yeah, that's what I would say. And this last thing is different forms of advocacy. It's individual advocacy, there's community advocacy. So as an individual, what do you do? As a community, what do you do to affect? Then there's structural advocacy. We're doing more work structurally, and that's policy writing, which is fun. I've done more policy work, definitely more toolkits. But that bit, it's just so different. You know, like policy is what brings the long-term change. It's easier for people who are actually with the communities to do the work. So being able to do it at those different levels, we are trying to do it. But yeah, I would say it is a labor of love and passion for play, because play isn't really valued.
Thank you. That actually gave a really good background, and I guess the nitty-gritty of it, because when it does come down to it, it is the money, and then also who are you working with, who do you know in there that can help make those processes slightly less frustrating. I'm curious on I mean, this can be picked up on either one, because I saw some of the quotes in from from the Reimagining Timber campaign. Some of them spoke to this idea of things shifting from impossible to possible, and Timber giving the children courage that wasn't necessarily there before to make them roar. And then you with Marie, there was this idea of it was impossible for some of the kids to visualize things. Then towards the end of the process, it became possible. So this can be picked up by either one of you. So how do you navigate that space, especially with young children, of taking them from a space of they literally cannot imagine beyond a certain wall to guide them towards their own choices and their own imaginations, as opposed to telling them what to imagine and as opposed to telling them what to think of themselves? So how do you navigate from that impossible space or that limited space when it comes to how they're imagining the world around them and themselves to that next step of, okay, now I can actually go beyond what the world around me is telling me I can go beyond?
I mean, shall I go first quickly? Yeah. Good question. And I think it's a very important one, because at least here in South Africa, we obviously were struggling with post-apartheid, that, you know, there's a lot of retribution that still needs to happen, and there's still a lot that needs to change as a young democracy moving forward. And me as a Dutchman observing this from the sideline maybe, but now being in it, you know, in this community work, it's been very eye-opening. But I guess what we're doing with Little Lions is, you know, when I designed the program 6 years ago, I was very focused on like goal setting. It's like always about like, okay, what do you want to become when you grow up? Because it's a very linear growth trajectory that we're used to in the global north. Because, you know, you can achieve anything you want to become. Whereas here, when I started 6 years ago, and we're sitting on a street corner exactly, you know, in the township where kids are also going to be growing up. Public schools are, don't get me started. So now my first question was also like, well, you know, what do you want to become? What's your goal in life? And then they say doctor. And I'm like, oh, wait, but you can't write the word doctor in year 11. So I don't know if that's actually, you know, are we now, you know, opening up a possibility, or are we, you know, making it more difficult? So then actually, you know, we stopped making this like long-term goal, but it was more breaking it down to like, what do you want yourself to be in this space? And the way we do that is like, okay, how can I be a better person right now? Because that is what I need. And that whole shift in our programming has been a phenomenal shift, where kids became more of an active agent towards change instead of passive, because they were leaning very much on what other people were giving to them. So they were becoming a doctor because other people told them that that is what they should be. Whereas what we are trying to do is that we want them to become their own active agents of change. And that comes with giving confidence, building qualities, showing them what they already have and what they can become in like short-term steps. So I think it's been an interesting process to create, but it's a very mindset space that we had to shift for these young kids, because even with us, we see them for 12 weeks, but then they still grow up in that same space. So we can't just take them out, but so that it's up to them to realize that there is more out there than just where they are growing up right now. So, but that is a mindset space where we need government, where we need policy makers, where we need parents buy-in, where we need more levels than just the kids. You know, there's so much play, there's so much workshops that we can do, but I do think that for that, we need, you know, a lot of these systems to come together and collaborate. Sorry, long answer.
Marie.
Do you want me to go? Or do you want to do a summary? I don't mind, because I know there's
No, you seem to, before I like try to bring things together, you
Oh,
did seem to have a response in there.
Yeah, so trying so I think particularly for children, it's considering the age. So, you know, I quickly spoke about child development theory. We work with like 3-year-olds up to 18. A 3-year-old might not be as limited in their boundness, reality, and imagination, because they haven't been constrained by what is reality and what could work. Because that's a really key thing. So I love working with younger children, because like, yeah, sure. And as children get older, I say it called adulteration of play. I'm just going to use some key parts of the philosophy, but it's recognizing that as you get older, your cognitive knowledge tells you some things are not possible. They cannot be done. Like the example you just gave, if a child is maybe 16, the mum or the dad or someone might have said, you know, you're never going to be able to afford to be a doctor or a lawyer, and then they're restricted. So for us, a key part is recognizing that the age impacts it, and then the baggage they carry holds weight. So we have to take time to unpack that. So you don't just do one workshop, we do 8 workshops to design play spaces with children, unpacking their mindsets of what they thought was impossible, what they believe could be possible, who are they ignoring in their possibilities, and then how can they collectively do it together. So that's I'm going to summarize with that. I'll summarize there, because I could go on. And it's 2 o'clock your time.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I think that actually gives a really good point to start wrapping things up, especially the note of who are we ignoring in these possibilities. Because I think one thing that was quite key, that both of you spoke to, was this importance of visibility. So visibility that is inclusive, that we're developing mechanisms that actually give light to people and children who have maybe not been given the attention needed. So from neurodivergence to having this plurality in how we actually work with them. And then the importance of visibility in terms of kids can actually see, okay, there's a more courageous, a more beautiful way that I can reimagine my surrounding and my environment, that there can be beauty in my environment all around. So I think the idea of we can't be leaving kids behind, and then how are we making sure that they do see that their own power self can be acknowledged in these processes is really, really important. So thank you both so much for sharing. Thank you for joining and for making this conversation so fruitful. So such interesting different perspectives, and that highlighted the importance of actually starting from the ground. How do we build these capacities for young ones? And I think an unbounded part of that, or the limitless part of that, is the fact that these young ones are going to grow into adults who will hopefully have had better foundations than the generation before to be able to actually build up those brighter futures. So in closing, I once again just want to say thank you to our speakers, and then a reminder to anyone that hasn't yet registered for the festival to register for the festival. So you'll be able to do so either on our website or a link in the chat below, and to register for the upcoming and final webinar in our series, where we'll be taking a more future-oriented approach to things. So Thank you so much once again, and hope that you have lovely afternoons going forward.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Right. Bye.